Welcome to our Coffee and Conversation series with the police chief, Policing with the People. With our guest speaker is our Town Manager, Mike Renshaw. Welcome. I want to remind everybody that this is filmed, so what we want to do is silence our phones. When we get to some Q&As, we'll walk around with a microphone so that makes sure that your question is heard from the community that are watching FCTV, okay? So we get to Q&As, just raise your hand, we'll come over, you can ask your question, okay? Enjoy.
Good morning, everybody. Hard to believe we really were hitting it off 2024 just like that, right? February, before you know it, it'll be the summer again. Some exciting things that were with the police department. I was visiting with Mr. Renshaw on the select board last Monday, and we swore in a bunch of new officers, 5 new officers to the department. So we're real proud of that. And just to kick off, Anthony DePalma here before us today, he's another lateral transfer. He's my 3rd officer I've coached so far. Comes to us from Scottsdale, Arizona. So that's a post-certified state, so it made the process go a little smoother. But he's basically, again, we have another lateral transfer starting this month as well. We have a bunch of open positions. We're interviewing Wednesday. Hopefully fill another position. Like I said, we hire hard to manage a little easier. So we're only going to bring in the very best for you folks. But very excited to have Anthony with us, and I just wanted to introduce him as today's his first official day in uniform. So the other thing I wanted to share, very excited about, later on today at 2 o'clock, Lieutenant DeCosta and I, we're going to be heading over to Barnstable for a press conference with the DA's office. Lieutenant DeCosta applied for and was awarded, along with a bunch of other departments on the Cape, a grant, basically just shy of $23,000. That's going to help us deal with our drug issues in town and violent crime. You know, as you know, we've had 5 homicides in 2 years, so we're very thankful. Equipment, training, different things that are going to come about that. So if you see our district attorney, please thank him for partnering with us. He's really has been working well with us. And lastly, that I want to share with you that I'm really excited about. And when I talked about the select board meeting, there were some officers that were given some life-saving awards. We swore a bunch of officers in, but we also introduced our 2 new clinicians. So this was a priority of the select board. It was a priority of the department. It's something that I had in my previous employee that works extremely well. They've been extremely busy and an absolute asset to the department in a number of different ways. So really happy about that. And you're going to meet them next month. They're going to come with me next month and they're going to present. And they're 2 young ladies with a lot of energy that really want to help people that are in crisis. So awesome added tool for our toolbox, and really looking forward to having you meet them and ask questions and really get to know your department. I'm going to be having the president of the NAACP come in April, and then I'm going to have one of our officers, Julia Massey, is going to come in the following month in May to talk about scams, things that are affecting you folks. Because I want you to really start to meet our staff as well at the police department. I say this all the time. It's not about the I's, it's about the we's. And you've got an unbelievable staff. I mean, they're working so hard. We're still very short-staffed. As you can see, we're doing everything we possibly can to hire. We've got 9 going into the police academy, February 12th. We've been working really hard to make sure that we really bring some really solid folks in to really care for you people. So with that being said, I know the town manager has a meeting later on, and I know you're going to have questions. I'm going to hang around today, so I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Renshaw. It's been awesome working with him. We're both kind of the new guys on the block, and it's been a lot of fun. I tell you, he's a busy guy, and I'm glad that he took the time to come with us today. Thanks.
Thank you, Chief. Good morning, everyone. Big round of applause for Chief Lauren and really all of his staff. It's hard to believe I've been here for about 8 months. We're going on my 8-month anniversary. I think I just beat you into the office. But it's been a pleasure working with Chief Laurie, and his high energy, his vision, his leadership is much needed in the community. So we could not be happier. What a great hire it was. I've got about 25 minutes, and I want to have some time for questions. It was hard trying to kind of hone this down to about a 20 to 25 minute presentation. But what I've decided to do is, y'all probably know it's budget season. So I want to talk a little bit about the budget. And I'm going to try to keep it interesting, engaging. There's probably going to be some questions at the end, but we're kind of knee deep in it right now, getting ready for our April town meeting. So what I'd like to do is kind of talk about the process. The FY25 operational budget, this is my first, obviously. We went through the capital portion of the budget in November, and that was an interesting process, but very rewarding. The FY25 operational budget process started in September. I basically issued a memo to the department heads. As you know, budgeting is a very collaborative process in municipalities, and Falmouth is no exception. The department directors were asked to prepare their budget requests, and we look at level funding. Anything beyond level funding, we required a memo kind of explaining justification for that additional request. But keep in mind level funding. In a long process, began in September, we wrapped up our final department director meetings, the assistant town manager and I and the finance director, probably mid-December. So it was probably about a 2.5, 3 month process, getting all the information compiled. Really, and you heard Chief Laurie mention about priorities, select board priorities. A big emphasis of mine during the preparation of this FY25, the upcoming year's budget, was looking at the select board's strategic priorities, their strategic plan. As you all know, there's 7 kind of elements or components in that plan. If you don't know it, it's posted on the website, on the select board's webpage, so I'd recommend and ask that you go take a look at it. What we really tried to focus on is, to the best we could, within our budget constraints, really focusing and honing in on the 7 strategic priority areas of the select board. In hiring outstanding, well-qualified staff, operational effectiveness is clearly one of those priorities, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. The other major elements, obviously we're avoiding any kind of override with regards to the Proposition 2.5. That's kind of a key, one of those key overarching goals, no override of the Prop 2.5. The other emphasis, as you all know, it's been well documented, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about an action plan to address this. Our facilities and our buildings are in a condition which I think needs to be addressed and addressed rapidly. Just the condition, the maintenance, or lack of sometimes. So one of the things we looked at was to add in our capital stabilization fund, basically think of it as banking some money so that in the future when these large capital projects, the buildings, police department, police station being one, and there's some other large capital needs coming up in the near horizon. By increasing and beefing up, so to speak, putting additional revenue monies into that capital stabilization fund, it basically allows us to draw from that and avoid borrowing and the costs associated with borrowing. So I think it's a good strategy overall, very fiscally conservative minded, making sure that you have that, not rainy day, basically making sure that you have money in the bank so that you can offset and not have to borrow funds and pay that interest, right? Which is, we all know, is kind of exorbitant at this stage. The other thing I want to talk about, although I mentioned level funded, and the department heads were very, very good about that, and they always have been. They're very realistic and pragmatic in their approach to budgeting and working with my office. The other thing I wanted to talk about is some of the inflationary pressures. Our revenues continue to be strong, and that's been the case for the past several years. We're very careful about over-projecting or overestimating revenues, so we try to pick a very conservative number. And typically, what you see is that money will roll over into free cash, because we do pick a number that's not artificially low, but fiscally conservatively minded. What I wanted to talk about is, I'll give you an example of some of the inflationary pressures. This budget, let me just say, is about 5.8% higher, the proposed budget, than last year's budget. And that's significant. That's about $8.9 million more in spending and expenses. But I wanted to give you some perspective. I mentioned, as we all know, as we balance our checkbooks at home, the inflationary pressures hit all of us, and cities, municipalities are no exception. Of that $8.9 million, let me just start out with the bigger number increase, our health insurance. We're seeing about an 8 to 9% increase in our health insurance, and again, that's municipalities that are not immune from healthcare cost increases. So that 8 to 9% increase is about $1.3 million of that 8.9 increase from last year to this. Some of the other increases, maybe not as significant, but they all add up, obviously, are solid waste. The Nauset disposal increases are going up by about 5%, or about $436,000. That's a contractual increase. Fuel costs, labor costs, everything else going up. So we knew that was happening. We knew that was coming, and we were prepared for it. Property and casualty insurance are just our insurance package that the town pays. That's going up about $226,000, so about $250,000 of that 8.9, just in property and casualty insurance. And the other example I wanted to give, and this is something that every few years we negotiate, is our electricity rates. Electricity costs are going up across the country. What we're seeing now is about a 35% increase from last year. Significant. And that amounts to about $187,000 of that. Again, I want to kind of put things in perspective. Of that $8.9 million, I gave you 4 or 5 examples of what kind of is comprised and included within that $8.9 million. What I wanted to do now is kind of shift gears. Chief Laurie had mentioned, and what an outstanding job he's doing in his staff in terms of recruiting and bringing outstanding officers into the department, serving the community. I mentioned the strategic priorities, and in November town meeting, we had town meeting approved 4 new positions, and I'll just kind of run through those quickly for those of you who don't know. It included an assistant HR director, what I think is going to be really important for us going forward. Right now, the HR department in the town of about 325, 350 employees, we have 3 people: the HR director, a benefits coordinator, and then just a kind of a receptionist technician, HR technician person. I feel to be competitive with our competition, the other 14 communities on the Cape, we need to do a better job with recruiting, employee engagement, keeping the good employees, the good staff that we have in the town with us, so we're not losing people through attrition and people going other places. To do that, you have to have the folks in the office to support more active, more robust recruiting. So that assistant HR director position, I feel, is going to be really crucial. And again, it addresses, we tied that back to one of the select board strategic priorities, and that was operational effectiveness. So looking strategically, looking tactically at adding key positions throughout the organization, not overdoing it, but looking at where we could get the biggest return on that investment. And I think in the area of human resources, that's going to be very important. Coastal Resiliency Coordinator, that was one of the other positions that was approved at town meeting, and we're looking for funding in this upcoming year's budget. Anybody that has seen the recent storms and have driven down Surf Drive knows exactly the issues that we're dealing with, facing climate change and sea level rise. And this Coastal Resiliency Coordinator position is going to work closely with the DPW, with the planning department, and some of our other local regional partners to address some of that coastal resiliency issues, basically hardening our beaches and our infrastructure, our roadways. Wastewater. As you all know, the state last summer imposed some pretty stringent nitrogen and Title V regulations on municipalities. Cape Cod, I think the Cape got hit the hardest in terms of those designations of the nitrogen sensitive areas. One of the things that we're hoping to add, is a senior project manager in the wastewater department, somebody that can kind of take a lot of that workload off of the current wastewater superintendent, so that we're more effective and efficient. And last but certainly not least, we had one position funded, a new position in the police department, and that's a deputy chief position. That's going to be very critical in terms of succession planning and just overall increasing and enhancing the operational effectiveness of Falmouth PD. We also are adding in this budget, a request for funding in this year's budget of another police officer, patrol officer, to add to the ranks. So I think that's going to be needed. And we're going to kind of gradually ramp that up in subsequent years, trying to add additional staffing to the police department as we can. I wanted to bring those 5 positions because I think it's going to be really instrumental in our success going forward. Again, looking at these strategic areas identified by the select board and trying to match to the best ability that we can, our resources, being realistic. The next thing I want to talk about is a couple of the initiatives. When I got here 8 months ago, I had grand plans, and some of the other municipalities and counties that I've managed over the past 30 years, I've seen what works and what doesn't. So I had some really great ideas, a vision of what I was going to try to bring into the town of Falmouth back in last June, mid-June. I quickly realized that the staff, as great as they are, everybody is overwhelmed, okay, with their projects, their issues. So I had to, myself, be realistic and kind of slow things down and pump the brakes a little bit as far as what I could roll out and implement. But I want to give you some insight into a couple of initiatives that are going to be really important to my office and to the select board. And let me start with performance measurement. Has anybody heard the term, what gets measured gets done? Peter Drucker was in the 50s, 60s, was a business consultant that was really influential in kind of developing that corporate mindset, measuring metrics, key performance indicators across your organization, and setting benchmarks and targets for reaching those just does nothing but make you get better, make you be more competitive. So some people say, and rightfully so, Mike, you can't run local government like a private business. And to a large extent, I think that's true. However, I think there are some elements and pieces of local government that can be run like a private sector business. We compete for resources, staff, just as much as the private sector business. So in order to be more effective, we have to kind of realize what can we do on a day-to-day basis as a management team to become more efficient, more effective. So what I've asked the department heads to do, and this has been an ongoing process probably for the past few months, is to generate each department 4 to 5, what I call, again, key performance indicators. Those kind of the fundamental core kind of services that you provide. And I don't want to get too much into the details, but there's a couple of different measures, and some of you have probably heard this before. There's a workload measure, right? Like the permitting office. How many permits do you process in a given month? That's a workload measure. That's just sheer volume coming in. What what the team is really working on are the productivity measures, the efficiency measures. So that using that permit example, of the 400 permits that you take in during a given month, how many of those do you turn around and complete within 2 days, 3 days, whatever target you want to set? The ultimate goal of performance measurement is to have those metrics, those things that you're taking a look at on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis, and track those as a management team so that at the end of the year, at the end of the 12 months, you're on target to whatever goals, objectives you set. A lot of people, when they hear performance measurement, and when I say it, I get sometimes the deer in the headlight look where, okay, Mike, what are you going if I don't make my numbers, quote, this month, my quota, so to speak, what are you going to do? That's going to be like disciplinary action. So I have to say, no, it's not the goal of performance measurement in my mind in local governments is not punitive. It's not a hammer. It's more of a wrench. So my goal is, once the departments working with my office develop these metrics or these key performance indicators within each of their departments, we track those on a quarterly basis. Every 3 months, we go in front of the select board and we give a presentation. And if we're on track, we set targets, kind of benchmarks where we expect to be. And if we're on track, great. If we're not, then that's an indication that we have to change things up. Do something different. Is it additional resources that are needed? Is it reprioritizing, moving existing resources around? So the ultimate goal of performance measurement is not to wait till you're at the end of the end of the fiscal year, end of the 12-month cycle, and then realize, oh my goodness, we haven't reached half of our goals or objectives. The goal is to make periodic adjustments, that's the wrench, throughout the course of the year, so that you're right where you need to be and where you planned on being at the end of the year. And hopefully that makes sense. So performance measurement, I've seen it work in other places, and I know it's going to work here in Falmouth. But again, I kind of preface it all by saying that it's a lot of work in the upfront, at the front end of it. It yields a lot of benefits at the back end. And me being realistic as the new town manager when I came in mid-June was to realize and notice pretty quickly that with all of the other projects and activities going on, I had to kind of tamp it down and pump the brakes, like I said earlier. But I'm optimistic, and again, I've got great department heads. I mean, the organization from top to bottom, and hopefully you've had the same experience when you interact with the staff. Outstanding staff, and I couldn't be more happy and more proud of working and being part of the organization. So a performance measurement, you're going to be hearing more about it. Hopefully, not hopefully, we have a retreat or a visioning workshop with the select board in March next month. And I'm hoping to have kind of the foundational pieces of this thing put together so I can kind of put it in front of the select board. They've heard me talk about it before, and it's going to be an ongoing initiative, an ongoing process. The next thing I want to talk about, see how I'm doing on time. The next thing I want to talk about real quickly is another kind of fundamental gap, I think, quite honestly, that we have here in the town of Falmouth. And I kind of alluded to it earlier in terms of the Capital Stabilization Fund and having funding set aside to be able to replace infrastructure, police stations. One of the things I've noticed in the 8 months in working with the department heads and the select board is having a process in place that allows us to track and monitor our maintenance efforts from town hall. We have, you may not know this, we have over 80 buildings, 80 structures in the town, and that's a significant number. What I've seen is that, and I don't want to pick on the police station, but let me just. So some of you have, and it was just a few months ago, right? It was documented, well documented, that the condition of the police station is not where we want it to be. Well, how did it get there? And I'm not being overly critical, although how did we allow the police station to get in the condition that it's currently in? My belief is that what the town of Falmouth needs, and I'm working with some other kind of local jurisdictions in the area that have done the same thing, because Falmouth is not unique in the area of having maintenance needs that have maybe been deferred or pushed off for years. What I'm looking to do, and there's going to be funding request in this FY25 budget, I'm going to town meeting in April, is a comprehensive, holistic, top to bottom building condition evaluation survey. My whole goal with this, and our goal, I should say, it's not my goal, the team's goal is of those 80 buildings, plus or minus, establishing for each one a facility condition index, basically a number, where it's at, and I'll just be kind of oversimplify it, 1 to 10. 10 being, it's pristine, relatively new, like the senior center, and 1 being the opposite. It's showing signs of degradation and needs immediate repair. What we're doing right now is we're evaluating some firms that have worked on Cape and in the Commonwealth that are experienced at doing these kind of evaluations. It's a process, likely a 6-month process from start to finish. I just don't feel like we can, as a town and as a management team, defer and kick this can further down the road. Because as you all know, those costs associated with making improvements are going to do nothing but increase, right? So what we can identify now, and what I'm expecting this study, once it's completed, to do is kind of a triage, give us kind of a listing of those facilities and buildings, that have life safety, immediate issues that need to be addressed. Those are the things that we're going to be obviously looking for funding to take care of as quickly as possible. And then I use the term triage. And then just kind of a priority ranking of those things that can perhaps wait, those things that need to be done within the next couple of years, so that we can use that information. One thing you'll learn about me is that I'm kind of a data nerd. I like to crunch numbers and look at numbers. And without the data, it's difficult to plan. We have a great, the town of Falmouth over the years has done a great job, I think, with its capital planning, but we cannot neglect our facilities, our structures, our buildings, right, that residents do business in and our staff work in. So by using the data telling us that of those 80 buildings, a quarter of those are in immediate need of some significant improvements, capital improvements. We feed that data, connect that data into the capital improvement plan, which is that 10-year plan. So we literally develop a pathway to getting the buildings to where they need to be as efficiently as we can. We can't flip a switch and correct all of the issues, but having this report, and it's going to be a comprehensive report. The one that I saw from the town of Plymouth was about 360 pages, including photographs, and this is a public document, photographs and those facility condition indices that basically show every facility, every structure in the town. That's what I'm expecting when we launch and ramp up this study. And again, having that information is going to allow us as the management team to better brief the select board and ultimately town meeting as far as what our immediate needs are. And again, I think it speaks to the importance of having that more robust, healthier balance in our capital stabilization fund, because based on my tour, and I haven't been in all 80, I'll admit it, but I've been in a lot of them, there are some issues with regards to our facilities. It's our infrastructure. It's your infrastructure. They're your facilities and your buildings. Myself, my office, our team, the management team have to do a better job of being custodians of those assets. And I think having this plan going forward with this foundational, comprehensive building evaluation study, giving us a baseline, is going to reap a lot of rewards going forward. So those are the two initiatives that I want to talk about, and I'm going to check my watch again to make sure I'm not running over. So I want to be able to leave time for questions and answers. So is this a good time for me to pause to do that?
Are you just going to fix the police station, or are you going to build a brand new one?
Great question. So part of what we're going to be doing, I mentioned the building evaluation. There's no more immediate need in all of our minds than the police station. So we're going to get experts, because I'm not one of those kind of structural engineer experts. We're going to get some experts to take a look. I'm going to go out on a limb, and again, I'm no expert, but my opinion is it's likely going to be a replacement, a new police station. I just don't think the bones, so to speak, of that building are where we need them to be. I think it's laid out in a way that doesn't make it as efficient and as effective. So I think if you're asking me today, and my answer today is, my hunch is it's going to be a replacement, and we're looking at site locations, where that might be going forward, so that we're prepared and we have a plan.
So I've got a pair of questions relating to the town parking lots. One is, if we have our hand up to get some charging stations from the infrastructure bill, and two, the handicap parking is really inadequate. My husband is disabled, uses a walker. There are a bunch of places by City Hall. If you're using a walker, getting to Main Street to a restaurant is not relevant from there. There are two places by Main Street. You're about to add a huge new restaurant right next to the entrance to the parking lot, and it's really insufficient. I wrote to the Disability Committee some months ago and have not heard back, but we can rarely park downtown when I'm happy with it.
So great question and points and observation, and I would share it again after 8 months. So let me literally this upcoming Friday, we have a meeting to talk about parking, well, in general, but primarily, principally in the downtown area, in developing a parking management plan. Our town planner, the planning office, is going to be involved in that. You mentioned some grant funding and some federal funding that might be available. We're going to look at all resources. We're going to leave no stone unturned in terms of trying to identify resources beyond town resources to make that happen. But again, I think the important first step, and there may have been over the years plans that have been sitting on someone's shelf. We need to take a look at our current parking needs with respect to the downtown. And that's going to start on Friday when we meet together as a management team and start to put thoughts down. And a consultant, I think Cape Cod Commission, is going to take a lead role in helping us lay out the details and bring that plan to fruition so that we have a good workable document that's not going to sit on somebody's shelf for the next 10 years.
I understand that expanding parking or charging stations for EVs requires funding. Painting lines for added handicap spots requires almost no funding. Cappy's, the liquor store, for God's sake, has 4. Town has 2.
Right. No, that's fair, and it doesn't require a tremendous amount of funding, but it does require some planning and moving around, some allocation of space. That's going to be a component, an element of this downtown parking master plan. But you're right. I mean, it doesn't require a ton of funding investment up front. It's just a matter of identifying where those spots are that we can add additional parking. Because I agree with you, there's a need, and we're going to work on that. Yes, sir.
A week and a half ago, I attended the monthly meeting of the Beach Committee, and there was a tremendous amount of discussion and engineering analysis on loss of sand, loss of dunes, loss of roadways, and so on and so forth. 2 things struck me at this meeting. Number one was that for all of 2024, there was $25,000 allocated for contingencies for repairs and so on and so forth, which shocked me no end because of how important the beaches are to our economy. It's the reason my family and I moved here. The second question that came out of this was, in addition to that shock, I didn't hear any discussion about a plan to remediate, Band-Aid, whatever you want to address it. The Beach Committee chairman said that they were going to come back to the select committee for additional funding. My question is, A, have they done that? And B, what is the plan to stop the degradation of the beaches and really save a big part of the economy of Falmouth?
Great questions. Lot to unpack. Let me start. So Dr. Schneider speaks with myself and the assistant town manager quite a bit. Actually, Beach Committee did an update to Select Board a few months ago. So let me kind of go in reverse order. I would agree with you. $25,000 for beach nourishment is not adequate. I managed for 6 years in the Outer Banks, and my experience there was that it was by magnitude of 2 or 3 times higher, and I was in a smaller, more rural community, to be honest with you. So I can say this, Dr. Schneider is chair of that beach committee, has worked really, really hard. I attended a meeting over at the library several months ago where she had some consultants and engineers, and some of you may have been participated in that meeting as well. You know, some of the flyovers, the drone flyovers, they're measuring this stuff. And again, I talked about my passion for data. Dr. Schneider and that group is gathering the data that we're going to need. And honestly, I don't want to, this is no excuse, but until you have the data to inform you to make better decisions about how to spend that money, I think sometimes we spin our wheels. My statement, I agree with you, the $25,000 is not adequate. So Mike, what is the adequate number based upon our needs? We have to identify what those are. And there's been studies done over the years. We lose traction. You know, and that's my job as the town manager, not to lose traction. We're going to do CZM, Coastal Zone Management. We're applying for a grant, and you probably heard this. Well, the Beach Committee, working with Select Board, is going to be requesting, I think the town match for this particular grant is in the order of $35,000. That will be attached to one of the articles, Article 19, that's going to April town meeting. That town match, and I can't remember the exact amount, it's $175,000, $200,000. But again, it's my understanding that the CZM, Coastal Zone Management grant opportunity is going to allow us to develop that plan. The other, to address long-term, not short-term Band-Aid solutions, but long-term solutions to, armament is a term that I've heard quite a bit, right? How we can shore up and protect our beaches. And by the same token, how that armament can protect our town assets, right? The infrastructure, water, sewer, road infrastructure, how we can better protect against, again, everything being driven by climate change and sea level rise. So that's kind of a long-winded answer. I think it's going to start with kind of an updated, fresh look using that coastal zone management grant opportunity that we're applying for. And the expertise is on beach committee, and I'll end with this. I mentioned the coastal resiliency coordinator, that position, and I've benchmarked across the Cape, some of the other communities and how they kind of, where that position fits. I mentioned, I think in my opening comments about the coastal resiliency coordinator, my vision, collaborating closely with Department of Public Works, the boots on the ground that are actually, responding to issues in the town with regards to some of the storm events that we've had recently, and also with the planning department, so we can have those long-term plans, right? And ultimately, we have to tie this back in to the select board's strategic plan, and one of the 7 key priority areas is coastal resiliency, making sure that we're prepared going forward. We have the town has a very strong partnership with Woods Hole. I have a meeting tomorrow to talk about, and on the 12th of February, at the next select board meeting, a couple of folks and I are going to be presenting an update on kind of resilient Woods Hole. I think some of you have probably heard of that effort down in the Woods Hole area, looking closely at again, climate change and sea level rise and its impact on the infrastructure in the Woods Hole area. That's an example. I think broader scale, more comprehensively, we just need to use that example and that partnership that we have with Woods Hole and that resilient Woods Hole group, and just kind of apply it across the town.
You talked earlier about performance standards, and I'm wondering if, in fact, you've been able to peddle this theory of yours amongst the select board. My question in saying that is to watch the meeting on TV and see how the select board acts as a whole. They start off very well. They start off with a generic platform, but it seems like the select board then evolves into minutia as the meeting moves along. And I'm wondering if an awful lot of the tasks that they pick up can't be handled better by other committees. That was my first question in terms of giving them performance standards. The second question I have is the issue around volunteerism in town. We have a very large retired community. I know we have a large number of volunteers here who do a marvelous amount of work. I'm wondering if we can't take better control of that group, expand it to a larger extent. We're not going to get a larger workforce in here by virtue of our housing situation. So perhaps there ought to be some sort of incentive for our larger volunteer community. Thank you.
Great questions. So have I pitched this concept of performance measurement and what gets measured gets done to select board? It started in March of last year when I was interviewing for the job, to be honest with you. I talked about it at length. Your observation with regards to the select board meetings, how sometimes we all get drawn in, but especially the policy leaders, the select board members themselves, into the minutia. I think there's always a risk of that. My job as town manager, we revamped to a certain degree, and I don't know if you've noticed it if you look at the select board packets, but you see there's like I call it an agenda summary. There's a bullet pointed list right in front of each and every agenda item. That my intent with that, and I've used that in other places I've managed in, is to keep the conversation focused. Keeps me on track if I'm presenting the topic, because it's literally a dialogue, a script, so to speak. But it also focuses the attention of the policymakers, the 5 select board members, focuses their questions. So I think that agenda summary, that cover sheet, if you will, has kind of helped over the past 7 months to kind of narrow the discussion. But sometimes we get off track, and sometimes that's on me. But yes, they have been briefed on it, and they're anxiously awaiting kind of that first quarterly meeting where we talk about the performance measures, and it all goes back to at the department level, me working with the department directors, the division heads, the folks that actually do the work, to come up with those half a dozen metrics for each department that are really meaningful and impactful and will enable us to guide our decision making, and then reporting on that every 3 months to the select board. Posting the results, posting that, and literally we have a matrix, a document where it's going to be posted on the website so everybody can see, and very visual oriented, right? So red means you're not doing a very good job. Yellow is like if you don't do something quickly, you're going to have to you're going to be having issues. And green is you're meeting your targets, you're meeting your benchmarks, and everything is going well. So be looking for that, because literally I'm working with the assistant town manager and all of the department heads, and we meet with the department heads once a month to kind of ramp that up. As I said earlier, and I don't want to beat this to death, I pumped the brakes deliberately early on, but I think now we cannot defer and kick that can down the road either. We need a system in place. The volunteer question, you're right. We have such great, talented people that are willing to volunteer their time. Of the 45, 46 boards and committees, I mean, that's a good example, I think, but you're probably talking even beyond that. How can we reach out and outreach into the community to develop maybe even a more robust volunteer base? I'm going to work on that. It's not one of the goals and objectives currently in the strategic plan, and I'm going to go back to that plan because that's my roadmap. My bosses, the 5 select board members, are using that strategic plan and those goals and objectives rolled up under those 7 elements. The operational effectiveness and how we can do a better job leveraging the talent of the people in the community, because like you said, sir, we can't, we're restricted by budget constraints as far as, adding new staff. How can we leverage and better utilize and take, not advantage, but better utilize those skills from the volunteers? And then reward those people for it. They're volunteers, but there's a lot of things that we can do. And I've seen this, and I was told in March when I was being interviewed, we need to do a better job recognizing and giving people kudos in the community that volunteer, and that's boards, committees, as well as maybe some folks that volunteer time in other ways. So that's on me to kind of come up with a plan to better recognize and reward those folks.
Mike, I'm Alice Kuchimba from North Falmouth.
Hi, Alice.
And I just wanted to say, you put your words into action. You came to the North Falmouth Village Association. We have grave concerns about our Village Junction building, and you said it was going to be a town priority. So we did find out that the earmark funds we got from the state were cut in half because they overestimated their revenue, and the migrant crisis has taken a toll on the state. So we're looking forward to your data collection, buildings condition survey, and we know that prevention is the best way to protect our infrastructure. The other thing I wanted to say, because I'm eager to, I have met the 2 social workers. I'm a retired social worker at St. Barnabas as a place at the table. And in addition to the select board's priority of affordable housing, I would hope when they do their retreat, they would also talk about our unhoused population and see how the town can work more effectively to create a comprehensive plan. The Cultural Council, of which I'm the chair, has done a new initiative, Music at the Table, where we provide cultural music to St. Barnabas as a place at the table. And I've sat with our unhoused individuals to really learn about their life stories. And I know there are gaps in services that we could pull together. So I'm hoping that the unhoused becomes part of the affordable housing issues.
Thank you, Alice, for that. And I agree. Addressing the challenges with regards to the unhoused is going to be an important priority, and it's not currently one of the goals and objectives, but when we met in August of last year, my first workshop with regards to the strategic plan, we did not an overhaul, but some tweaking to it. We changed affordable housing, the number 1, and not by coincidence, it is the number 1 priority of the select board. We changed that to housing. So making it more, I guess, holistic or comprehensive. Obviously, the affordability piece is important. But yes, the unhoused is going to be it is a challenge, and we need to do a better job, in my opinion, of identifying resources and, again, leveraging what resources we have to address the problem. So we're actually trying to flesh out the agenda, and I'll make sure that that's when I meet with the chair and vice chair and the other select board meeting members. We're soliciting input from them right now, obviously, to draft the agenda for that March 2nd workshop. So that will definitely be on the list that I have a discussion with them. And real quickly, with regards to the maintenance, I did have an opportunity to tour that building. And I probably didn't do a good enough job of this. In addition to knowing the baseline, where we're at, facility condition index, Alice, you mentioned it. I mean, just the preventative maintenance and putting eyes on the buildings, right? Every quarter, I keep using the quarter, every 3 months, walking through the building. The senior center is in great shape because it's new, but if we're not putting eyes on it, walking through, looking at the systems, right? And by systems, the HVAC, the envelope, the roofing system, that's a system. If we're not looking at that stuff now, 5 years from now, we're losing an opportunity to do that preventative maintenance, the paints. I don't know how many of you people spend a lot of time at Town Hall. Y'all do. Everybody goes into Town Hall. Walk up to the portion that accesses my office, off to the left-hand side as you're looking at the building. The fascia of that building is starting to fall off, and it's rotted. And again, if we had painted, I'm oversimplifying it, but if we had put eyes on it 5 years ago, we would have put some paint on it and it preserved it, and it probably wouldn't be in the condition that it's in now. And again, I'm not trying to be critical. I'm trying to kind of speak to the urgency of the problem and what we need to do to fix it. And just be realistic. We need to do a better job of that.
Yes, Steve Walsh from Hatchville. From time to time, we've had issues with the air quality in our buildings throughout Falmouth. I was on a committee, Falmouth High, and I was astounded at the amount of people that were getting sick, and they didn't have a policy in place to maintain the heating and cooling system. In other words, it's not just changing filters, it's actually getting into the ductwork and vacuuming it out. And I wonder if we should have a professional company do this work on an annual basis so we could hold them accountable and we know it's getting done.
Great points. So that is one of the strategies that we're looking at right now. So our facilities maintenance department, they do a great job, but there's only so many of them and in 80 plus buildings to get around to. Your example you gave with the ducting and the just over the years, what builds up in that ducting. And I'm going to refocus again on Town Hall and selfishly use my office as an example. I've got one of those ducts going out of my office, and it was obstructed by just the dust and collection over the years. So again, that speaks to the need to get people in, putting their eyes on the buildings, walking through, doing an inspection, and where we need to supplement that with outside contractor, vendor help. I think that's going to be part of the discussion that we have. I'm not expecting a rosy picture when I get this 350-page building condition evaluation report back. But again, parsing that out and prioritizing those areas and then identifying, I said the life safety, the health safety, obviously, issues are going to be at the very top of the list, those things that need to be immediately addressed. That is very likely, in my opinion, sitting here talking to you on February 5th, that's going to require some outside help to get people on that right away. So the contractors is probably going to be
It's the things you can't see.
It's the things that are behind and obstructed. But if you had a preventative maintenance plan in place, you would make it a point to see those things.
Professional company comes in and do it, and then you can hold them accountable.
Yeah.
And you know it's being done.
So we'll be working on that. That'll be part of this larger comprehensive building evaluation.
Actually, I'm Gail Densler from North Falmouth. The previous two commenters pointed out about the maintenance that needs to be done on the buildings, and I would like I would hope that that would include the housing that the town does own, the developments that have been in the paper periodic. I think I can leave her. That have been in the paper of being poorly maintained. We need more workforce housing. Worker housing, and we do own some, and we need every unit that we have. So they need to be really maintained, and maybe some eyes could be volunteers, because there are many volunteers working with low-income people in this city, and you could employ some eyes that might be able to do it on a volunteer basis if they were supported by staff.
I think that's a great point. I think there's certainly going to be an opportunity for us to look at using volunteers in that way. I just want to be clear, or so that I understand. You talked about the housing units that have recently been talked about in the paper, perhaps. So I think the issue was in regards to the housing authority, the Falmouth Housing Authority, and those are not town-owned properties. That's a separate. The housing authority is a separate entity. So they have a board of directors, board of commissioners, and they make their decisions. So of those units, and I just had a tour a couple of months ago, Bobby Richards, the director of the Housing Authority, and the chair, Mr. Patton, and I toured all of the properties. I had a chance to meet some of the residents, and I was concerned and wanted to kind of see behind the scenes, right? So I'm looking around at walls and making sure. So I'm not an electrician, but I know some of the issues that were documented were some with regards to permits and whatnot. So that's an opportunity for the town to work more closely with the housing authority to make sure that, again, we're keeping up with things, the maintenance, right? We're requiring permits to be pulled, and some of it's just communication. My chance to meet with the director, Ms. Richards, was kind of eye-opening to me, because some of it's just the communication. So I've invited Ms. Richards to attend our monthly department meetings, so that, because the building commissioner is in those meetings, so that there can be some dialogue, right? I mean, putting faces to names is important, and then it opens up the door for communication. So, yeah.
Hi, my name is Tom Dignas from East Falmouth, precinct town hall meeting member there. At risk of going down into the weeds for just a moment, I wanted to make sure, since we have the chief here, I'm sorry there's no one from the fire department, has the new hiring met that very disruptive, maybe, complaint from the fire department union about dispatcher needs? Are we beyond the injunction at this point? Is that problem solved?
So we're continuing to have, and I'll let Chief Laurie speak to kind of the operational impacts, because as you all know, he's the interim communications administrator. And you all may have heard we just hired a full-time communications director. So that there's so many moving pieces to this. Having that position filled, because it's been vacant, quite honestly, since August of last year, having that communications director position filled, and we have a very well-qualified person in that position. I was going to say candidate. They've been hired. Select Board approved my recommendation to appoint. Is going to go a long ways towards changing the culture, and I could spend an hour talking about how important it is, and I won't, how important it is to change the culture. Jeff has done a great job just in the few months that he's been in Captain Reed and the others at addressing kind of the immediate issues with regards to staffing and, again, the culture. We're developing more trust. We're continuing to have dialogue with Local 1397, the firefighters union. It's not completely resolved. I'll be honest with you, but I have a meeting tomorrow morning with the president of the union. So we're continuing to have that dialogue, and I'm hopeful for a resolution. And actually, and I'll stop and let Chief chime in. We're being so aggressive, productive with regards to hiring those vacant communications officers. We're filling a lot of slots right now with per diem, the folks that are working in other jurisdictions that can come in and work shifts, in addition to having 4 or 5 qualified communications officer recruits kind of coming in. As you all probably heard, 9 is the number of full-time staffing in the communications office. We were down to 2, which resulted in me having to declare that state of emergency in terms of staffing shortage, which allowed the chief to do some things. Anyway, I say that because we're doing a great job, I feel, and we're going to be getting ourselves out of this staffing shortage very soon. It's just a matter of training those new folks to be shift ready. Jeff, do you have anything else to add on that? I told you I could keep going for hours. But hopefully that addressed your question. I think we're going to work our way out of this thing pretty shortly.
So I know the town manager does have to leave, but just to explain, because I don't want anyone to be in fear. So what happened was we went down to a very low number. So the fire department, we asked them to give us a hand as well. We've been going down for a little while, the police department. I want you all to know that we're a secondary limited PSAP. What that means is our calls come in from Barnstable County. So you dial 911, it goes to them, they transfer it to us. So all we're saying is someone has to answer the phone. If you're in crisis and no one answers the phone, someone has to answer the phone. In my staff, Captain Reed, the first person to go downstairs, by the way, salaried employee, working 11 at night to 7 in the morning, my staff said, you know what, we're going to step up, we're going to go down there, and we're going to answer the phone. It's not ideal, but we know our lingo, we know what equipment, our assets need to go where, and we want to make sure our men and women are safe. So right now, the fire department, because we went so low, when we have to tone out or do something for the fire department, that's just not in our wheelhouse, it's in theirs. So they've been training down there, they've been going down there and helping out when feasible. As the town manager stated, it's a very difficult job. When I say all the police officers we've hired a number of communication officers, and some of them just don't work out. It's a very difficult job. I will tell you, I could not do that job. It is very difficult, multitasking job. But we have officers that have done it in the past and officers that now went down there to train because they want to make sure you are safe and they want to make sure that their team members are safe. And I want everyone to know that you're in great hands, and we're going to continue to do what we do best, and that's provide a public safety service that's hopefully second to none to the best of our ability. When we talk about staffing, yes, we're very low. A lot of the proactive things that I want to do as your police chief, I can't. It's really just answering the calls right now. We have 5 sectors, 54 square miles if you count our waterways, right? And I don't have a boat, so that's something I'm working with the harbor master on to get some training for our officers. But we need to have at least 8 sectors. You're talking 44 square miles, So these are things that have been brought up in studies in the 60s, 70s, and 90s where they said we should have added. And as a town manager stated, these are the cards basically that we're dealt. We're not casting blame, we're not saying it, but it's time to move forward. And I think under Mr. Renshaw's leadership, that's what we're doing. We're moving the town forward in a very, very positive direction. I see very good things in the years to come.
Thank you. So as Chief said, I am going to have to get out of here, but a couple of things. I want you to be able, for those of you who weren't able to ask a question, I want to be able to respond. I want to give you my contact information. So hopefully, I meant to bring a bunch of cards and I did not. My contact information, my cell phone is on the website. So if you go to Falmouth Town Manager's website, it's there. Mike.Renshaw, RENSHAW, at falmouthma.gov. That's my email address. 774-392-1365. That's my cell phone number. It's on the website. I know we're on TV, but I want you folks to know that that my office, Peter Johnson Staub, the assistant town manager included, we're accessible. So I want you to be able to feel like you can reach out and contact us. Okay. It was a great meeting with y'all, answering your questions. Hopefully, I did a decent job with the responses. But if you have any more follow-up questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Okay. Thank you.
Awesome job. So thank you all for coming again. I mean, this is great. I mean, 70 plus, right? And they turn people away. So sign up often, sign up early, apparently. And I look forward to next month you meeting our clinicians. They're phenomenal people, and they're doing an absolutely outstanding job. And again, just to clarify and to kind of expand on what Mr. Renshaw was stating, it is a fantastic team here. I mean, being able to be accepted by Jill to come in every month and meet with you folks and really partnering in trying to provide quality of life initiatives and issues that better serve Falmouth and our region. And by the way, with our clinicians, through the Cape Lex Law Enforcement Council Chiefs, we're actually now creating a law enforcement council that is going to, our clinicians are all going to be working together across the Cape. This is a regional problem. We talk about homelessness and drug addiction and everything else. So I want you to know this whole region is going to be getting stronger and more effective in the coming weeks, months, and years. So thank you very much. I look forward to seeing everybody next month.